We want to welcome each and every one of you to our program tonight. We are going to be looking at Sephardic culture. We're going to be looking tonight at a Sephardic journey, a genealogical discovery that I've discovered of my own family and our own DNA and our own genealogy. This is a study that I took upon years ago and finding out some new things. Our presentation is in memory of the victims who suffered and in many ways are still suffering injustice, loss of property, torture, imprisonment, and death in the hands of the Holy Office of the Inquisition. This is Eliezer Erbach, December 7th, 1921 to October 3rd, 2009. He is my mentor. He is the one that, as a Catholic priest, he came and blew the shofar, and that opened my heart and my eyes to my Hebraic culture and my Hebraic way of life. In fact, when he's the one that did the Gideon Kabin also for Zach, and dedicated him to Adonai, and when Zachary was a little baby and newborn. And so we had the pleasure of having Eliezer. How many of you knew Eliezer? Many of you knew Eliezer. We had the privilege of having him in our home many times and of supporting his ministry out of Denver. Next time. This is Sephardic Legacy, Sephardic Destiny, and it's a foundational survey of Sephardic studies. I am B'nai Anusim. Many of you are here, B'nai Anusim. The reason that I am here today, and the reason we're here is because our ancestors decided to survive by assimilation, becoming part of Hispanic culture, becoming part of the culture of La Iglesia Católica, and in the 17th century. They lost their cultural Jewishness. Their Jewishness that they were part of, they lost it, but they did not lose the Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, Yaakov. Within Catholic culture and Protestant culture, the Elohim, the God of the Bible, is still taught. So even though we lost our Jewishness, we didn't lose the Elohim. Today, I am back. We are back. We have returned. Soy Judío. That's one of the things I want at the end of this presentation. Those of you that believe that you and your culture originally were Jewish, whether it's by genealogy, DNA, stories of your ancestors, to come to that point that you could say comfortably, soy Judío. Soy Judío. I am a Jew. And that's kind of hard for a lot of people. A lot of people have looked at the Jewish people in negative ways, especially in our Hispano culture. And there was a time when to call someone ese judío was a bad word. To call him something negative, to call a person judío was a bad word. But now we have come to that place in time where we need to be, because we've come back and returned to Abrahamic faith, to Mosaic faith, to the faith of Messiah, to the faith of the apostles, which it says, the faith once delivered to the saints. When most people think of Jews and the Jews of New Mexico, they usually think of German Ashkenazi Jews who came in the Santa Fe Trail. They came to Las Vegas and Santa Fe in the early 1800s and 1900s, right after the Civil War. And they came to Albuquerque and they spread out to New Mexico. Today, the descendants of these first Ashkenazi families have taken their place in New Mexico politics, education, again, many of the buildings are named after them. Many streets are named after them. In Las Vegas, we have the first Jewish synagogue. Many of you have been there. In fact, one of my great uncles, Miguel Otero, according to Henry Tobias in the book called A History of the Jews of New Mexico, said he was a financial contributor to that building project. And it's really interesting to think, here in the 1800s, they built a synagogue, and one of my great uncles contributed money, as probably some of your family members too. Next. But unknown to many people, Jews from Spain came to New Mexico in the 1500s because of the Spanish Inquisition and the later so-called Mexican Inquisition. They hid their Jewish blood and ways, assimilating. And to assimilate means to kind of become part of the dominant culture as Católicos and Hispanos. The first ones to converted out of necessity. They were forced, because if you couldn't, think of this, if you couldn't buy or sell unless you were Catholic, what are you going to do? You're going to become Católico. And that's what they had to do. But we know that some of them converted because they found something in this Catholical culture and religion. They found something that they know they needed, and that was Yeshua the Messiah. However hidden, however cloaked, they would be what we would call messianic. But they left us today. They left us today their DNA. Now, how many of you could raise your hands, how many of you have found that in your DNA, you've done your DNA and you have Jewish blood? Some of you have Cohen blood. How many of you have that? 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, many of you. Almost half the congregation here. And that Jewish ancestry, we need to research that. I challenge you, please research your ancestry, because one of the things that we as Jews have, we have a responsibility. Moshe said at Sinai, when Adonai said, "Will you obey?" Moshe says, "We will obey, and our children." Adonai said, "This is for you and your children." And so if we are children of a Jewish ancestor, which through genealogy and through DNA I have found out that I am, then that means I have a responsibility to follow Torah. Not just as a Gentile who has converted,
but as a Jew who has returned to the actual faith. And we need to do this. We are living in prophetic times. Even this meeting tonight, what we've been doing here the last week, celebrating Sukkot, celebrating the Sabbath every seventh day, all the other feasts, this is the fulfillment of a 3,000-year-old prophecy of a final return. And the exiles from Jerusalem in Sephardic will repossess the cities in the Negev. This is from the prophet Obadiah 120. And the prophet Obadiah 120 here gives this thing. Exiles from Jerusalem. In other words, Jews that have been exiled in Sephardic. Sephardic is Spain. And our ancestors went to Spain after the captivities. In fact, some of them went to Spain late. Ancestors of mine, I've discovered, went from the Babylonian captivity. They were in Babylon. And in Babylon, they stayed there when many of the Jews came back to Jerusalem after the captivity with Ezra and Nehemiah. Some of my ancestors stayed in Babylon. And there they became famous rabbis. And then after the Persian revolts and after the Islamic invasions of Babylon, they left Babylon and went to Spain. And of course, from Spain, they came over here, and aquí estamos. And so it's important for us to know that what I'm seeing in my own life and in the lives of some of you is this 3,000-year-old prophecy that we are going to return and we're going to possess the cities of the Negev, which I believe we are going to do. Now, I want all the young people to stand up. Those of you that are 29 and under, I want you to stand up. It is for you that we are here today. Your future is our present stand. And those of you that are 29 and below, you are not just the future, you are the present. It is your children and your children's children that are not born yet that will be the future. And what has happened in the past, we don't want it to happen again. We want your children and grandchildren to become Torah observant. Thank you. You may take your seats. So we need to find our forefathers. ¿Quién somos? What does it mean to be Hispanic? What does it mean to be Mexican? Chicano or Latino. All these words we pass around. Where did our ancestors come from before they arrived in Spain? Where did our ancestors come from before they came to the New World? Para Mexico, South America, the Americas, and the Southwest for us. Are Hispanic people mentioned in the Bible? Have you ever thought that question? Are Hispanic people mentioned in the Bible? Did the prophets of old speak of the Hispanic people? Does Elohim have a plan for Hispanic people in this troublesome times we live in? What is our legacy? Where is our legacy? You know, today, think about this. When you see some of these guys, you know, walking down the street in their movidas, with their movidas, and lowriders, ese vato. Think of this. Think of this, seriously. These are descendants of the prophets. They don't know about it. They're descendants of Israel, and they don't know about it. Their culture, their trueness, their Torah has been robbed, stolen from them. And it's been mixed with the things of the world, with the culture of Azteca, with drugs and murder and violence. But we need to get rid of that. That's one of the things. We need to get rid of that and come back to the real culture that Adonai wants us to have. In a lecture by Andre Brooks, she says, what do we know about the Jews who chose to convert and take their Judaism underground rather than accept expulsion from Spain in 1492? What was the real story behind those who fled to the New World? Long before traditional Jewish history suggests Jews were even here. Most traditional Jewish history says, oh, the Jews came to Ellis Island. They came through there and they came here. They came to the Santa Fe Trail. They came to New Mexico. They're Ashkenazis. But wait a second. There were Jews here to wait for them, unknown to the Ashkenazi Jews. There was a whole Sephardic culture that had lost its Hebraicness. Who was Carvajal? Who was Robledo? What do we know about New Mexico Sephardim, the Anusim, the crypto-Jews? The accounts in history of their veiled lives and past is a mystery. We keep researching it, and we've hidden some good nuggets. A lot of it is still behind closed doors. What is the resolve that I, you, and countless others have to return to a faith and culture after not knowing the secret for 500 years? Think of this. But something is happening. You see it. You see it. It's all over the news. Books are being read. This gentleman, by the way, Stan Hortes, wrote this book, To the Ends of the Earth. He was a New Mexico historian. As a New Mexico historian, he's Jewish. He worked at UNM and wrote books there. And all of a sudden, he kept getting knocks on the door. Soy judío. My grandma used to do this. What about this? And all of a sudden he wrote this book, To the Ends of the Earth. Excellent book that I think everyone should have. And of course there's our dear friend, Dr. Del Sanchez. He is the president of the Sephardic Anusim Center of the Americas. Another author and someone that woke me up to this. We've lectured together. Sanchez, Dr. Del, is probably today one of the most eminent teachers and authorities, lecturer on this subject. I would really encourage you to, again, pick up his books because this would make an excellent library if you want to study about Sephardic legacy and Sephardic destiny. And of course, the Sephardic Jews. Sometimes you look at Sephardic Jews and you look at some of our people. Hey, doesn't that look like so-and-so? Doesn't that look like that lady that comes here? Doesn't that, what? Which one of these girls said, hey, that reminds me of, so-and-so. And so people look like who we are. Our men look Hebraic. Our women look Hebraic. And so it's important for us to say, you know what, even with our looks, even the way we are, our cultures, our mannerisms are very Hebraic. If we don't know where we came from, we don't know where we're going. Where do you come from? I'm not talking just about, well, I came from the barrio, or I came from the South Valley. Oh, I'm from the West Side. No. Not, I came from Madalena, or I came from Cuba, New Mexico, or I came from Chama, or something like this, Las Vegas. No, we're still going further. Oh, I came from Mexico, from Veracruz. No, we're talking further. Where did we really come from? Oh, España. Oh, no, even further. From Spain, Babylon, Israel. If we know where we came from, we will know where we're going. Once I found out where I came from, where my ancestors came from, hey, I know where I'm going. I have the road in front of me. If we don't know from who we came from, we don't know who we are again. Well, as I've done a lot of research, I've discovered, well, Don Isaac Abrenial, he was one of my great uncles or my grandfather, and I've come to know that the Baal Shem Tov, that Maimonides, that some of these great, in fact, my 17th great-grandfather was a great rabbi by the name of Hophanes, and Isaac Hezekiah, and my 12th great-grandfather was Abraham Halevi. We come from the Halevi line. And all of a sudden, once I found out, now I know why. Since I was a little boy, I wanted to study, and I was wanting to study the Bible, and I loved Israel when I was in 3rd grade. Now I know that when I was in 3rd grade at Old Armijo School down in the South Valley of Albuquerque, and I remember the day, it was a Friday, and we were going out the door, and the teacher, her name was Mrs. Vigors, I believe. Anybody remember Mrs. Vigors in Old Armijo there? She was passing out the weekly reader. And as she was passing it out, I remember getting that, and I remember coming to I could take you there right now. Coming to the door to that 3rd grade room at the corner and looking at, and the weekly reader said something, and of course they used the name Palestine in those days for Israel. And they were talking about Palestine, about Jerusalem, and all of a sudden I looked at that and I wanted to go to Jerusalem. I wanted to go to Palestine. When I was in junior high, I wrote at Ernie Pyle. I wrote some poems. I've read them to you, I've read some of these poems to you about Jerusalem, about Israel, and how I longed. Think of this, in junior high at Ernie Pyle, in our barrio, the South Valley of Albuquerque, I was longing to go to Israel. Interesting enough, I forgot about those poems. I forgot about that stuff. And Adonai opened the doors for me to go to Israel. Just last year or 2 years ago or whatever, I was looking through some of my old papers, going and getting rid of stuff, and all of a sudden I found this. Look at that. Adonai answered a prayer in a poem that I had read, that I had written in 7th, 8th grade about wanting to go to Israel. I know who I came from. I know who I am. And who I am, soy judío. Our responsibility, when we know whose we are, we learn his way. And if we're judíos, if we're Jews, if we're Hebraic, then we belong to Adonai, the king, to Yeshua, the king of the judíos. The king of the judíos is Yeshua. Always was, always will be. When we know his way, we change. When we know his way, we change. ¿Quién somos? ¿Y de quién soy? Who am I? Well, I'm Denis Ismael Otero. That's the name that My mom and dad, that was my dad's name, by the way. My dad was Denis Ismael Otero also. From who am I? Well, I'm from the Otero clan plus, 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 plus. My dad's name was Denis Ismael. His dad was Serafin Otero. His dad was Refuge Otero. His father was Lorenzo Otero. His father was Pedro Otero. His father was Cayetano Otero. His father, we don't have a first name on him, but we have the last name of Montenegro de Otero. And on my mom's line, we're Martinez y Martinez. Think of this. We all have 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64 ancestors. Every one of us has 2 parents, 4 grandparents, 8 great-grandparents, 16 great-great-grandparents, 32 great-great-great, 64 great-great-great. ¿Quién eres tú? ¿Y de quién eres? Do you know who you are? Do you know from who you are? Now, who's this person? Is this my grandfather? How many of you think, if you already know the answer, don't say it? But those of you that know, is this my grandfather? Is this my father? With a nose like that. Is this my brother? Is this my uncle? Is this my cousin? This guy's related to me. But who is he? His name is Rabbi Israel Brody. He lived from 1895 to 1979. He was the chief rabbi of Great Britain during World War II. And he's related to me. Actually, he is my 17th cousin. Think of it, he's my 17th cousin. Now, our common ancestor was a name by Isaac ben Hizkiah, who was born at 1000 in Baghdad, Babylon, Iraq. He died in 1060 in Barcelona, Spain. Now, Israel Brody is his descendant, and I'm his descendant. Israel Brody, and now we believe that Israel Brody was probably in Spain. His ancestors were in Spain. They went to the Ukraine and then went to England. Mine came to Spain and then they came to New Mexico. But what's interesting is Hezekiah, Isaac ben Hezekiah, we have in Jew, and this is through Jewish circles, he is a descendant, an actual descendant of King David. And I could trace him to many of the famous rabbis and famous people there. In fact, it's interesting now reading the Bible. I read the Bible. The other day we were reading from the book of Nehemiah, and we found the name Meshullam. Did you guys hear when we said Meshullam? Well, what's interesting is that Meshullam is a great-great-great-great-grandfather of him, which means that Meshullam is my great-great-great-grandfather too. So when I read the Bible now and say, oh, look at that. Now, this isn't just me. This is many of you. Those of you that are related to me, this means that this is you too. Many of us that are listening to this is you too. Have you ever climbed your family tree? Who are your forefathers? Now, I passed out one of these charts, and it's a family tree chart, and I encourage everyone to fill it out. In fact, some of you that fill it out, what you could even do is fill it out and give it to me, and then through my databases, I could find out if some of your ancestors are related to me, and if we are, then, hey, somos primos. Now, some of the Hispanic people in the Southwest are descendants of Sephardic Jews who have been in the Iberian Peninsula since the time of Solomon. In this study, we're going to trace this people of the book. Psalms 126. When Yahweh turned again the captivity of Sion, we were like them that dream. Then was our mouth filled with laughter, and our tongue with singing. Then said they among the Goyim, the Gentiles, Yahweh has done great things for them. Yahweh has done great things for us. We are glad. Turn again our captivity, O Yahweh, as streams in the Negev. They that sow in tears shall reap in joy. And so what's interesting is that today Adonai is turning the captivity that we were captive. We were long captive, but Adonai is turning it back. Now, the biblical journey from Adam to Noah to Shem is found in Torah, in Breshit 1 through 11, chapters 1 through 11. We find the account of the peoples of the world. This is the common ancestors in history. Think of it, all the world, everybody in the whole world has a common history, and every person in the Bible, their common history is found in the Bible. It doesn't matter who they are. It doesn't matter from where they are. Their common history is in the Bible. Our historical Sephardic journey begins over 4,000 years ago with a land that became Spain, the Iberian Peninsula. The word Evidia is the word Everia or Heveria, which may well mean Hebrew's land, the land of the Hebrew, from the Hebrew word avad, which means to cross over. The word Hebrew, the actual word Hebrew, means to cross a river, a crosser overer, someone who crosses a river, as our first Hebrew, Avraham, crossed from Ur of the Chaldees, from the other side, and came over to Israel. The word is Eved, pronounced Eved or Eber. Eber in Espanol, Eved in Espanol. Eber is the great-grandson of Shem, and again, we find these in the Bible. And this is where we get the word Evidia. And here's the family of Abraham. Get yourself out. Here's the Fertile Crescent. Here's where Abraham was. And he travels north and comes to the land of Israel. He goes over what's called the Fertile Crescent. You see, this is more fertile because of the rivers. This is the land of our forefathers. Here's the sons of Jacob and how they come to Yeshua. Now, if you're Jewish and you're descendant and you could trace your line back, then think of it. And this is kind of hard to think. Can you imagine Yeshua is our cousin? In fact, if you are Jewish, not even believe, when you go to synagogue, when I go to a synagogue or see a Jewish person, they don't realize it, but Yeshua is their cousin. Even the one that they don't believe in, that's your cousin. Because remember, Yeshua was not only the son of Elohim, but he was the son of David through Miriam. That makes him our cousin. There's one Torah for all of us, and again, I'm going to go kind of fast. Interesting enough, Deuteronomy 28 says, Yahweh shall cause you to be smitten before your enemies. You shall go out one way against them and flee 7 ways before them. You shall be removed, dispersed into all the kingdoms of the earth. Because of disobedience to Torah, we're going to be dispersed into all the kingdoms of the earth. Where are the Jewish people now? The wandering Jews, still wondering why? because of our sin. And our sin is that we are not following Torah. Once we return to Torah, Adonai will open the doors for us to come back home. Yahweh shall scatter you among the peoples from one end of the earth to the other, and you shall serve other gods, which neither you nor your fathers have known, even wood and stone. And what have we done? I remember bowing down and praying to wood and stone, to statues of God, of Yeshua, of Mary, and the saints. I remember. Adonai doesn't want us to do that. We did that. And your life shall hang in doubt before you. You shall fear day and night. You shall have no assurance of life. There was a big Israelite colony in Tarshish in the time of Solomon. And Tarshish is located here in southwest Spain. And so some of our peoples, even from the time of Solomon, would go there for ships. The king's ships, here's Israel, went to Tarshish with the servants of Hiram. Even every 3 years, once the ships came, bringing gold and silver, ivory, and apes. But Jonah arose to flee to where? Where was Jonah fleeing to? To Tarshish. Here's Joppa. He was here at Joppa, and he fled to Tarshish from the presence of Yahweh. And so think of it. You know, when you do something wrong, and now he had definitely done something wrong. He disobeyed Adonai. And where do you go? You go hide. You know, well, what do people do when they, do something wrong? They escape from prison. Where do they go? To their primo's house over there in Las Vegas. To the Raza. And so Jonah must have had Raza over there in Tarshish. So he goes over to hide in Tarshish with his primos over there. But Adonai caught him. My Elohim will cast them away because they did not hearken unto him, and they shall be wanderers among the nations. Watch what it says over here. They shall escape to the nations, to where? Tarshish. Where's Tarshish? España. Of course, there's two captivities, the Assyrian captivity and the Babylonian captivity. And in both of those captivities, many of our people went to Spain. Here is much of the captivities where they went to Assyria, and some of them went to Spain, they went to Babylon. Many of the tribes went to captivity, and we find them in India, we find them in China, we find them in Afghanistan. In fact, now that we're fighting the war, many of the people, many of the Taliban are not people from other countries. They are of the last 10 tribes. They're Anusim. They've been forced to follow Muslim rule. But many of you that are listening to this, and maybe you're listening to this program in Afghanistan or Pakistan or one of those places, many of you are Jews. Many of you are Israelites. But you have, like us, were forced to go to Catholicism. Many of you have been forced to go to Islam. And it's time to give up Islam. It's time to give up all the religions we've been forced to follow and come back to the Elohim of Abraham, of Isaac, and of Yaakov. Of course, here's the lost 10 tribes, the dry bones, Obadiah. And again, here's the scripture again. The captivity and that are in Jerusalem, that is in Sephardic, shall possess the city of Negev. Now watch the word. The word Sephed in Hebrew means a scroll or a book. Our Torah scrolls are called Sephed. And this is the land of Sepharad. Sephed, Sepharad. Sepharad means the land of the scroll, the land of the book. Think of that. Sepharad is where and it's possible that our ancestors took the scrolls over there and took the book. We have a people named Seferino. Sefer, the man of the book. And Obadiah, again, here's the word, Sepharad. Here is Sepharad, here is Spain. Again, a rabbinic scholar, Yohanan Ben Yuzel, says that Spania, where we get Spain, is really from there. James, the brother of John, was buried in Spain. Paul went to Spain. The letter of Clement, some extra canonical letters claim that Paul actually did go to Spain. The first revolt in 70 AD and the second revolt in 135, many people were dispersed to Spain. There were many Messianic Spanish Jews in the early days, and of course the diaspora, both before and after the Roman destructions. Many of our Jewish people went to Spain. Here is a study that was done about the Shapiro families after the destruction of Jerusalem. We find many of them in Morocco, Tangiers, all these areas right here. In fact, there's a little island off of Tangiers there where all the people there are Cohens. All the people there are Kohanim people. And then from there, they crossed over to Spania, up north. Here's where our family's from. And from there, they went. Many of the Levites are in, especially for some reason, Ireland. Many people that are Irish are actually descendants of the Levite clans. And from there, they went to all points north and east. The Jews of the Golden Age, again, here are some of these guys. This guy is my 19th cousin, Samuel Hanagid, 15th, Moses Maimonides. By the way, when I saw this picture one time, I don't know why, but he reminded me of my brother Tony. Is my brother Tony over there? Is he in the back? There he is. Doesn't this guy look like Tony? When Tony was younger, I have a picture of Tony that looks just like him. What do you guys think? Now look at that closely. That's Maimonides. He's our cousin. Here is King Ferdinand and Isabella. They were married in 1469. They're the ones that started the Inquisition. And again, after they took over from the Moors, they won over the Moors, and they made truce, and they decided to make the whole of Israel, of España, to be Catholic. So here's where we get nuevos cristianos, new Christians, or creyentes, nuevos creyentes. And they converted of the Jews to Catholicism. Many converted because of true faith. Many financial. Many to save their lives. Many continued in Judaism as crypto or hidden Jews. And of course, in Spain, the Jews who converted to Catholicism. Now listen to this closely. The Jews who converted to Catholicism but continued following Jewish practices, they were the ones who the Inquisition was against. They were not against Jews who were Jews. As long as you were Jewish, you were safe. But if you were Jewish and you converted to Christianity for whatever reason, and then you were still following Jewish ways, you still kept the Sabbath, or you still did not want to eat ham, then they would come after you. And here's Torquemada, the Grand Inquisitor. His grandmother was Jewish. She had converted. But he was the one that was public enemy number one against our Jewish brethren. Here is Torquemada at the Spanish court. Don Isaac, this is one of our grandfathers, and these are some of our primos. When the expulsion order came, they came and brought a lot of money to the king and queen Isabella and Ferdinand and said, here's some money, let us stay. And Torquemada comes with the cross, throws it down, and tells the king and queen if they allow the Jews to stay, then they will be coming against the Christ. And so they took their money, but they had to leave anyway. Here's a seal of the Inquisition. Again, only baptized Christians faced investigations. So the Jews who converted and reverted back is the ones that they came. Here's an auto de fe. It was a public humiliation ritual, public penance before you got burned at the stake. When you repented and said, you know what, I'm a Jew, I repent. At first, once you were accused of being a Jew, even if you repented, you had to go through this public humiliation and wearing some of the things that we saw back there, and then they would still burn you at the stake. Here is the Alhambra decree. This is the edict of expulsion that was signed by July 31st of that year, which was the 9th of Av, which incidentally was also my birthday. I was born on the 9th of Av in the biblical year. They had to leave Spain. Cristobal Colon. It's interesting that on July 31st, 1492, Cristobal Colon also received the decree to leave the mainland, and leaving on 3rd of August. So the same day that all Jews were supposed to leave, Colon receives the decree that he could go with the Nina Pinta and the Santa Maria. Okay, crypto-Judaism is a secret adherence to Judaism while publicly professing to be of another faith. The term B'nai crypto-Jew is used to describe descendants who maintain some Jewish traditions of their ancestors, often secretly and while publicly adhering to other faiths, most commonly Catholicism. Conversion of Spanish Jews, estimates between 50,000 and 70,000 that chose to avoid expulsion when they converted to Christianity. Here's the Jewish exodus from Spain. They had to leave north, south, on ships and however they could. And where did the Jews go? Most of the Jews from Spain went north. Many of them went to the islands. They came to the Americas, to Africa. Many of them went back to Spain. So this whole area, this whole Mediterranean area, if you are Italian, if you're Greek, even if you are African or something like that, you might have Jewish heritage because our ancestors moved from Spain to all parts of the world. This is Beatriz de Luna, created an escape network, an underground railroad, if you will, that saved thousands of crypto-Jews from the Inquisition. She is my 8th great-aunt's first cousin's wife's 2nd great-aunt. The conversos who converted instead of leaving were now under increasing pressure from the Inquisition. and looking for a place which they could retain their Spanish Jewish identity, and some focused on the New World. By 1531, large numbers of them left Spain and Portugal, and they came to New Spain through Veracruz. They arrived here in the New World in Veracruz, Puebla, all that area between Puebla, Veracruz, and what is now Mexico City is where many of the crypto Jews came. Hernan Cortez arrives in Mexico, and he comes towards what is now Mexico City. This was the name Anahuac given to what is now Mexico in pre-Hispanic times. The Spanish conquistadores destroyed Tenochtitlan in 1521. It was rebuilt after it was designated the capital of the viceroyalty of New Spain. In 1524, the municipality was established, known as Mexico, and as of 1585, became officially simply Ciudad de Mexico. The name Mexico was used only to refer to the city and later to a province within New Spain. It was not until the independence of the Viceroyalty of New Spain in 1821 that Mexico became the traditional and conventional short form name of the whole country. And so Mexico was just the name of that place. In fact, it comes from the valley, El Valle de Mexico, the Valley of the Sun, and of the Mexica people. Here's the Spanish Empire. Of course, Spain was given this side, and this side was given to Portugal by the Pope. I don't know why the Pope thought he had authority to give, lands to people. The Inquisition comes to Mexico City, to Peru, to Colombia. I've been in Colombia. I've been to Colombia, and I've been to the dungeons there in the castle right next to the sea. Was the castle. When I was in the Navy, our warship was parked right across from the palace of the Inquisition, and so we were able to go see these archives when I was there. Luis de Carvajal was a Portuguese governor of Nuevo León in 1596. At the height of the Inquisition's fervor against crypto Jews, he was declared a heretic. Now, he was the governor of Nuevo León, and as the governor of Nuevo León, his nephew, his mother, and his sisters were all sent to Mexico City, and they were all burnt at the stake there in Mexico City. And of course, the trial in the Inquisition is the eyes of the Holy Office, where your neighbors, servants, even family and friends. Have you heard that little saying, if you see something, say something? If you see something, say something. Guess where that comes from? The Inquisition. Because in the Inquisition, if you saw the chimney of someone not lit on the Sabbath, how come they don't have a fire? If you see on the Sabbath that a person is doing this or not doing that, if you see someone, you ask them, hey, want a ham sandwich? Oh, no, I don't feel like eating today. And they're always saying, oh, no. Well, if you see something, say something, and that's what the Inquisition is. It means to inquire. So they would inquire. They would ask the question, have you seen anybody who doesn't like pork? Oh, you know that? David Estrada, him and his wife, they don't eat pork. And so they start asking questions. And then once they get you, they ask you, well, do you know of anybody else? Well, does he light fires on the Sabbath? Oh, no, he never. His chimney's never on. And then that's how they got you. The questions would go on for months or years, and always with torture. And then you went to the auto de fe, and then punishment. And here's some of the implements of the holy torture. And in the back, you have a lot. If you've looked at the museum in the back, you're welcome to go back there and see that. Here's La Silla. And La Silla, I don't know how anybody could actually sit down. I don't know if they did this just to put fear into people, but it's a chair of total spikes. Isabel de Carvajal and Lenore were strangled with iron collars, then burned at the stake. And these iron collars, if you see, they have little keys here. And they put them on, and every day they tighten just a little bit. And they tighten just a little bit. And they tighten them just a little bit until you have the pokes and the thing, and it's a slow death. Now we're talking about teenage girls. We're not talking, we're talking about young ladies that were burnt, and then afterwards, after you're dead or dying, they'll burn you at the stake. And the ultimate sentence, burning at the stake, where they would actually put you on a stake and put all kinds of fires there and burn. This is El Quemadero. This is a plaque in Mexico City. I've been to this place, and it says there, in front of this place was the Quemadero, the burning place of the Inquisition, from 1596 to 1771. And this was a convent. Today, I think it's a medical school. The building is still up. Here's the founding of New Mexico. Of course, most of us here know this history. Vasquez de Coronado, Castaño de Sosa. Oñate comes in 1598. The Pueblo Revolt in 1680. 1692, Diego de Vargas comes in. End of Spanish rule in New Mexico in 1821. In 1846, General Kearny comes to New Mexico and takes possession of it in Las Vegas, New Mexico. This is our chronology here in the Southwest. New Mexico was given its name in 1563 and again in 1581 by Spanish explorers who believed the area contained wealthy Indian cultures similar to those of the Aztec Empire in the Mexica Valley. Mexico adopted its name centuries later in 1821 after winning independence from Spanish rule. New Mexico was only a part of the independent Federal Republic of Mexico for 12 years, 1863 to 1848. So we were only under Mexican rule for 12 years. Between Spain and the United States, we were under Mexican rule here in New Mexico for 12 years. And here is New Spain, and we're someplace about right there. Oh yeah, I can see the building right there. And Coronado comes, De Sosa comes, Juan de Onate comes, El Camino Real. Can you imagine 1,600 miles from Mexico City to Santa Fe? And our ancestors walked all that way. Sometimes they walked it 2 or 3 times in their lives. Were the families and soldiers who came with Oñate and sincere converts, appearing to be devout Catholics, but secretly maintaining Jewish rituals in their homes and passing down the true faith to their children? Do modern-day descendants of the first or second generation of crypto Jews really continue to pass Jewish rituals in secret after 400 years? Are you a descendant of the crypto Jews? In 1626, the Spanish Inquisition continued to investigate individuals, even here in New Mexico. This is the headquarters of the Inquisition. These are the ruins of Curay Pueblo with the Iglesia de Nuestra Señora de la Purísima Concepción, Our Lady of the Immaculate Conception. Now, this building is still up. If you want to, you could go to see this building, the headquarters of the Inquisition in New Mexico, and it's by Chilili here on the Manzano Mountains. You could still go up there and see it. I've taken our family up there, and in fact, the last time we went, I think Zachary and Ariel were walking on this rock on this wall right here, and the ranger came and says, "Get off of that. That's a historic site." But yeah, and it says there, you'll see the sign that says there, headquarters of the Inquisition right here. So we had it here in New Mexico. In fact, where our family, how many of you are from the Manzano area? I know my family was from Punta de Agua, Tajique, that area. And that's where think of it, that's where the headquarters of the Inquisition was. It's in those days, of course, in a out-of-the-way area like that today. The Franciscan friars at Curay performed minor investigations, summoned potential eyewitnesses, recorded testimony, arrested, and deported individuals back to Mexico City. Let's look at Francisco Gomez Robledo and family. Francisco Gomez was born in 1576 in the Villa de Coima, Portugal. He was the son of Manuel Gomez and Ana Vicente. His brother Alonso was a high sheriff of the Holy Office of the Inquisition. In 1604, Oñate brought him to New Mexico, then brought him to New Spain, then to New Mexico. He joined the military and ascended to the position of sergeant, becoming the most prominent military officer in the colony. In 1610, during his military service, he co-founded the town of Santa Fe, where he and his family resided. This is a big guy. Francisco Gomez was accused of having Jewish heritage. It is believed that his sons, Francisco and Andres, were circumcised. The Inquisition ordered a medical examination and confirmed the circumcision. Did he secretly practice Judaism? Andres and the other brothers were not examined. Now, Andres Robledo is my 7th great-grandfather. So his brother, Francisco, Francisco and Andres were part of the military. And every time they would go take a bath out there when they were out in the field, they would go to the river, and all the men would go take baths with everybody, like going to the showers in military or school. But Andres and Francisco would always go hide. They were very modest, and they would go hide and take baths by themselves. Well, one time what happened is some of the soldiers said, "Why do these guys go take baths by themselves? See, we're men. There's no ladies around here." And so what they did is they followed Francisco, and they were spying him out. And then they noticed that while he was taking a bath, that he circumcised. So that's how they busted him. And what he said in the annuals, and this is how he got away with it. He says, when me and my brother were small, we had boils. And so we had boils there. So the doctor had to cut the boils off. And they said, sure. And so they were actually busted, and he lost everything. Francisco lost his money and their house and all that, where the hotel there in downtown Santa Fe, that's where their house used to be, there at the La Fonda. The La Fonda Hotel used to be their house, and they lost all that property because of that. So remember, it's hitting home. And here's Francisco Gomez Robledo's, and by the way, his dad, Robledo, through his mom's line, Robledo, the first person to die in New Mexico was a Robledo. North of Las Cruces, there's that Robledo Mountain, Radium Springs now at the bottom, but that mountain is called Robledo Mountain. And when they crossed with Oñate, they crossed there in what is now El Paso Juarez, and they came here, and he was the first one to die in New Mexico. Were the original colonists of New Mexico truly Jewish exiles forced to become Catholics by the Spanish Inquisition? Do their present-day descendants, us over here, well, many of us over here, actually carry on and pass down Jewish DNA, rituals, and practices in secret after 400 years? Our condition today, assimilation into Christendom as Catholics, as Protestants, crypto-Judaism, undercover Jews, paganism, ways of the nations, drugs, alcohol, drug violence. This is our condition today as these descendants. Many of us are Messianic Jews. We've accepted our Yeshua, whether through the Catholic Church, the Protestant Church. We would be Messianic Jews. Here's Yod He Vav He at the Cathedral of Santa Fe. This is downtown. In fact, this is the San Felipe Church here in Albuquerque. Look at that. There's 2 stars of David, 2 Magen Davids at the altar here in downtown, in Old Town. I don't know if any of you have ever been to that. How do we search for a hidden past? Through family traditions, surname dictionaries. We have one in the back. Personal names, places. Doing DNA follow-up. By the way, how many of you have done your DNA? Okay, if you haven't done your DNA, I would encourage everybody to do their DNA through the Y DNA is the male line. Only males could do that. The mitochondrial DNA is female lines. Females and males could do that one. And Family Finder, autosomnal, males and females could do that one. So I would encourage everyone to do one of the tests. And if you, we will be able to help you even tonight if you want to do that. Here's the Y DNA, the mitochondrial DNA, the autosomnal DNA. Here is my Family Finder. This is what it turned out about me, that I am, what here, 40% European, 23% Middle Eastern Jewish, and 30% Native American. And it doesn't matter what percentage you are. In Jewish, this is not like even the Native American says 50%, quarter percent, 8%, 16%. In Jewish, if you're 1%, you're considered full Jewish, from the mother or the father. If you're 1%, you are Jewish. Here's the Cohen model haplotype. This is Father William Sanchez. He's from St. Edwin's Parish, or was, I believe. He got moved up to, where? Santa Fe. And he was one of the first ones that tested positive for being a Cohen, for being a priest. He appears as my second and third cousin in our DNA makeup. Hispanic women have Jewish disease. This is Bernadette Sanchez. Some of you have, she's spoken at some of the conferences. Here's an interview she did for Channel 13 News, that there is a BRCA genes, and this is a disease of breast cancer and cervical cancer that many women in New Mexico have. And it used to be that people thought it was only Ashkenazi women. But now there's, wait a second, well, why do a lot of Spanish women have it? Well, until DNA, hey, wait a second, now we're Jewish. Sephardic names, we learn about that. There's Judaica. These are some of the things that have been found. These are a talit with a hole in it, and this was that was found. Here is a It has been 4,000 years of Ivrit, 1,500 years since the emergence of Jews in Iberia. One of the things that we need to start looking at is not only what our legacy was, where did we come from, who are we, all these things that have happened in the past. But I want us to start focusing our attention on the future. What is our future? Where are we going to from here? What do we need to do now? Do we return to Rabbinic Judaism, or do we stay in Roman Christianity? Neither of this is acceptable. We need to return to a Torah observant, messianic, apostolic faith. And so we need to do this for such a time as this. We who are Jewish, somos judíos, can worship the Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and Yaakov and follow Torah as believers in Yeshua. You don't need to stop being a Jew to become a Christian, to believe in Yeshua. You don't need to deny Yeshua to return to your Jewish roots. Back to Torah. This is default. We have a button, a default button. You know how in your computer you have a default button that if everything breaks, you press that and it takes you down to default? It's time that we press the default button for our faith and say, I am B'nai Anusim. The reason I'm here today is because although my ancestors decided to survive by assimilating to the dominant Católico Hispano culture of the 16th, 17th century and lost their biblical Jewishness, I have returned to the Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, Yaakov, and to the true Messianic hope of Israel, Yeshua. Today I am back, I have returned. Reverse the curse, and I will gather the remnant of my flock out of all the countries where I have driven them. I will bring them back again to their folds, and they shall be fruitful and increase. In that day Yahweh will raise his hand again a second time to reclaim the remnant of his people who remain from Ashur, Egypt, Patros, Ethiopia, Elam, Shinar, Hamad, and the islands of the sea. And Adonai says that he's going to bring us back. We need to come back and return to Torah. And I am out of time here, but again, this was a fast, going through this in a fast speed. Hopefully, one of these days we could actually take a whole day to see this, but because of the time that we have now, we can only do this. Let's go ahead and stand. Father, we thank you for the opportunity that we have tonight. We pray that your Ruach HaKodesh could just bless each one in Yeshua's name. We're going to have some baptisms.